Cindy. Lina sana. Lina sana. No, Lina sana. No, Lina sana.
What is it, Dad?
Sana. Kacha. Not the other kacha. Lina da. So Lina sana kacha. Yeah. A bit.
Wow.
Okay, here we go. Blast away, Sylvie. Hello.
Hey, how are ya?
Hey. I'm doing good. Hi there, Joanne. How's everybody?
Good.
Hi there. And Nancy.
Hey,
How you doing, Nancy?
good. I'm good.
Good.
Here we are.
Here we are indeed. A couple more people just joining up here. Oh, there's Katja. All right, I think we're going to have about 9 people all together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. And how's everybody doing this evening? Pretty good? Cool. Okay, hi Katja, how you doing?
Hello.
Great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, so good to see people and know that everybody's still alive and everything.
Yeah,
That's great.
totally.
Yeah, and how have you been? All right?
Yeah, pretty okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Why do you get the picture on there so that you can see
You
it?
got to do a start video thing. It's a bottom left-hand corner
Okay.
of the
Perfect.
screen. There's a stop video and start video. There we go. Hi, Cindy. How you
Yeah.
doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good.
Oh, how y'all?
Yeah. And there's Sherry. Hi, Sherry.
My cat will walk by the whole time we're here. So
My
just
cat
so
will
you
probably
know.
crawl up onto my shoulders because we got a brand new kitten and he's still in that climbing mode. Hi, Lena.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Very good. We got a nice group here. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's great. And there's a couple of more people. Somebody texted me and said they would be late. And I think there's Shona is going to join us at some point too. So that's great. What a great group to get started. So we're all beginning fiddlers here, eh? Right on. Now tell me, is there anybody that's brand new right out of the box? Sherry, you are, and Nancy, you are.
That's true, yes.
Okay, so Nancy, I think did you actually just rent a fiddle?
I did. I rented a fiddle from Long Quays. Yep.
Excellent. So you really are brand new right out of the box.
Yes.
Okay, and how about you, Sherry? Did you have one already? I think you're muted. I think you're muted.
Sorry, my phone.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I bought a fiddle after Celtic Colors last year.
Right. Oh, I remember that email. Yeah, cool. Gotta love Celtic Colors, eh? It's going to happen virtually this year. Yeah, they got a whole bunch of shows happening, which is kind of cool. It's great. It's really great how everybody's kind of moving forward with this whole thing. And it's fun to be doing these shows, too. I did one for Home Roots the other day. It was really fun. But anyway, so that's great. That's great to hear. I love when that happens. It's not the first time I think that that's happened, so it's pretty cool. Cool. Okay, so I'm Dan McDonald, and I'm a fiddle player from Cape Breton, and I'm going to talk about how we start playing the fiddle, the best way to approach it, and some ways to practice and get more familiar with it and better with it. Now, some of these guys are already taking lessons from me in various capacities, like Elaine and Lena takes lessons sometimes, and Joanne is part of the group that meets on Wednesdays. And other people have not had any lessons from me and you guys have never even tried to play the fiddle. So there's going to be a little bit of duplication of the stuff that I talk about with the fiddle. But for people that have already been playing a bit, it's still going to be good to hear it all again, obviously, okay? And there's might be some stuff that you actually have never heard before. There's a lot I hear that a lot, that people tell me that I'm talking about stuff they've never heard about with playing the fiddle. So hopefully that'll be the case. And certainly my main function is going to be answering questions, any questions at all, and helping you with your approach. Okay? So the way I like to start is, and you guys, some of you have already heard this speech, but I'm going to go over it again, which is the how the fiddle's made, what it's made of, and how it works as a machine. Okay? Now, it's made of wood, as you can see, and it's made of 2 kinds of wood. Actually, 3 kinds if you include the black bits, which are made of ebony. But the main fiddle itself is made of maple and spruce. So the back and the sides and the neck are all made from the same piece of maple. And when you see the piece of wood that the fiddle maker uses, it looks like a piece of firewood. It's a wedge-shaped piece of wood. And they cut a corner off of it, and that's what they use to make the neck. And then the rest of it, they split down the middle, flap it down like that, join it together, and that's why you see the line down the middle of your fiddle there. See that? And that's kind of the basis of the fiddle. That's how the fiddle starts, like that, with the building of the back. And then he slices some more pieces of maple off that same hunk to make the sides. See that? So the back and the sides and the neck are all made from the same piece of maple. And then the belly, what they call the belly, is spruce. Okay, it's a softwood. And that's how this fiddle is made. Now, the reason that they use the 2 kinds of wood, and always been the same kinds of wood for making fiddles, is because maple is, first of all, a musical wood. There are many instruments made out of maple. It's a very resonant wood, and it has a lot of musical properties, and so it's been like that for a long time. So the hard wood that they use to make the back and the sides are what puts out the high frequencies on the fiddle. Okay, and the high frequencies come from the upper strings here, A and E. And if you look underneath the bridge, there's something called a sound post. And if you look really hard, you can see there's looks like a pillar, in a bank or a convention center. And it's what its function is to bring the sound from the high strings down to the back of the fiddle, which is hard wood, and vibrates fast and puts out the high frequencies. You see that? And then underneath the low strings of the fiddle, the G and the D, now this is much harder to see when you look into your F hole, but if you look at the very top of the F hole through that hole there, you might be able to see something that looks like kind of like a floor joist in your basement. So it's a piece of wood that's glued up under the belly of the instrument like this, at a right angle to the belly. It looks a little bit like a floor joist. And that's called the bass bar. It's about this long, and it's what spreads the sound from the low strings over the top of the instrument, which is made of softwood. And so it vibrates slowly. You see that? And so basically this is your tweeter, and this is your woofer, but because it's 1750 or something like that, you have to make the music yourself. And so that's how the violin works. That's how the instrument works and how the sound gets transmitted. Okay? Now, it has a few parts that are good to get to know. You got the pegs here up at the top, and we only use the pegs when the fiddle is really way out of whack. Now, I know classical violinists that use the pegs all the time, and that's cool, but for most of us fiddle players, we only use the pegs when the fiddle is really, really out of tune. Or when we reach the bottom of these fine tuners here after tuning and tuning and tuning, and you got to let them out, you got to tighten the pegs and let them out again. See that? So that's really the only time we use those wooden tuning pegs. Okay? And then we got the 4 strings. They go over this little tiny bit of wood here called the nut. Okay? And there's little grooves there that hold all 4 strings, and they go down over this piece of ebony here, which is called the fingerboard. Okay? And that sits on this piece of maple, which I mentioned before, is called the neck. Now, oh, there's another person. That's Shona. Right on. Say hi to Shona. Anyway, so that's the fingerboard, and that's where we put our fingers when we play. See that? That's why they call it the fingerboard. And usually we use the whole thing eventually. But for now, we're going to stay down in this end. And then the strings go over this thing here called the bridge. Now, I always mention that the bridge is the most important bit on your fiddle because it's what transmits the sound from the strings down to the body of the instrument. So how you doing, Shona?
Good.
Great to
I have
see
a new
ya.
dog here.
What's that?
I have a new puppy here who's very confused.
Oh, God, I bet.
We'll see what happens.
Okay, that's all right. Anyway, so yeah, so that's the bridge. And like I said, it is the most important part of the instrument. I often say that if you had a beautiful Stradivarius that was worth, $5 million, if you put a crappy bridge on it, then it's going to sound as bad as it can possibly sound. But if you got a really crappy, bottom of the line fiddle, and you put a really, really nice bridge on it, that fiddle's going to sound as good as it can sound, okay? Getting a bridge put on a fiddle takes a full day for a fiddle maker to do, to get it right. He keeps stringing it up and trying to unlock the most sound he can out of the bridge. He adjusts it in a few ways. He can take off material from this side so he can make the bridge thinner. And he can adjust with these little curly cues. If you look at your fiddle really close, you might see that those curly cues have been filed down to a point, a bevel. And sometimes have done even more to it. And that's, again, just to unlock sound, to get it vibrating exactly the way it should, to get the sound out. And basically, a fiddle maker once told me, it's all in the bridge, because if the bridge is too thick, then the sound has trouble getting through to the box, okay? And so you get less sound. If the bridge is too thin, then it does all the vibration in the bridge, and none of it makes its way down to the box. See what I mean? So that's kind of the tricky part, and that's why I say the bridge is really the most important bit on the instrument. And then we got the tailpiece that holds the strings and how it holds the fine tuners. We got the chin rest here, but I don't know why they call it a chin rest. They should call it a corner of your jaw rest, because your chin never actually goes in there. It's more of the corner of your jaw that goes in there like this. See that? That's called the chin rest. And we got the F holes. So the F holes are where the sound actually comes out. And they call them F holes because it looks like a cursive F there. See that? And they have gone through a lot of changes over the years. The first sound holes on the fiddles in the 1600s, late 1600s, it was just a hole, like a guitar. And they found that to be very quiet. They couldn't get enough volume out of the instrument. You got to remember, in those days, the audiences were still large, but the instruments were very quiet. And they had no way to amplify themselves, so they played around with these ideas to make the instruments as loud as they could possibly be. So the first F hole was just a regular hole in the middle of the instrument, and everybody found that to be too quiet, not enough volume, and so then they moved to these crescent-shaped holes, and that increased things a little bit, but it was still very quiet, and it was Stradivari that finally came up with the design of the F hole, especially these little bits that are free in the middles there, and the length of it, and that's what we still use today, and it's the loudest design for sound holes for the violin. Do you see that? That's why they're shaped that way. So they went through a lot of changes to get to that place. And then this is the button that holds the whole fiddle together. All right, so I'll just recap that again. At the top we got the scroll, and the funny thing about the scroll is that violin makers spend a lot of time on their scroll, and they're very proud of their scroll, but the only job that it has is to hold the fiddle up while the varnish is drying. That's all it does. But even still, they still take a lot of pride in it. So anyway, so that's the scroll. We got the tuning pegs. They go through this part here they call the peg box. See that? The strings go around those tuning pegs. They go over this little bit of ebony here called the nut, over the fingerboard, which sits on the neck, over the bridge, which is really the most important part of the instrument, down to the tailpiece. This is the chin rest. These are the F holes, and we've talked about how the fiddle works. So does that cover the fiddle itself? Does anybody have... Now, at any point, if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask me, because I'm here to answer questions. That's what I really love, okay? So that's how the fiddle works. And then we also got the bow. So does anybody have any questions about the fiddle? No? Excellent. Okay, the bow. So here's the bow, and it's easily the hardest part of playing the fiddle, okay? The left hand, the fiddle itself, is no big deal. Yehudi Menuhin, who is a famous violinist, had a famous saying. Somebody asked him once, how long does it take to master the violin? And he said, for the left hand, about 8 to 10 years. For the right hand, nobody has done it yet. So it is really the biggest, most challenging part of playing the violin. It's where the rubber meets the road. You see, it's where you make your sound. The way that the bow makes sound on the string, I've recently read about, and it's very interesting because they didn't understand back in the old days. They didn't understand properly how the bow made the sound. The horsehair made the sound on the string. Back in those days, like I remember when I started, my teachers used to tell me that there were thousands of little hairs that look a little bit like scales if you look under a microscope, and they kind of tickle the string as they move along and pull on it, and that's how it makes the sound. And they used to think that you put the rosin on there to fill in the gaps between the little hairs. But in the late 1800s, somebody did stop motion photography, and they found out exactly what makes the bow vibrate the string, and it is not that. There are thousands of little scales on the hair, but that's not what makes the sound. The rosin is what makes the sound. The rosin, which is, here's a cake of it right here. I'm sure you guys all have a little bit of it in your case. And this is what it looks like. See that? This is a brand new one because I dropped mine just before the COVID lockdown. So I had no rosin for that whole 5 months or whatever it was. But anyway, that's what it looks like. And it's made of dried tree sap and linseed oil or amber, different amber than the, combinations of tree sap and amber. Everybody has their own secret formula, but the idea is that it's very sticky. And so when you put it on your bow hair, it creates this really sticky surface, and as you're pulling the bow on the string, it creates a cycle of slip, grip, slip, grip, slip, grip. And it reminds me of when you try to go down a slide when you're a little kid in your bare feet, and your feet kind of stick and then let go, stick and then let go. And that's what the bow does to the string to make the sound. Slip, grip, slip, grip, slip, grip. And so when you're pulling the bow along, that's exactly what's happening under the hair. And that's why it's so difficult to make a good sound, because that line between slip and grip is so fine. It's so easy to have too much energy and emphasis on it or not enough. And so that's what we battle, and that's how the bow makes the sound on the string. All right? Now, the bow has also gone through a lot of changes over the years since its inception, especially when it comes to the frog. Now, the first bows in the Baroque era were actually bowed the other way. They went this way, like a bow and arrow, like you would use a bow and arrow. And the problem with that, it was very limited because of bounce and because of the force of the bow against the strings was way too tight all the time. And so at some point or other, they started to bow the other way. You see that? And then this here part, the frog, so I should go over the parts of the bow. At the very top here, they call this the tip of the bow. Okay. The main part is called the stick. Surprise, surprise. Down here is this part here that actually is the adjustable part that holds the hair, is called the frog. All right. And when you turn this here thing that's called the tightening screw, it makes the frog travel up and down the stick, tightening and loosening that hair. All right. And that's how a frog works. It's very important when you pull out your bow, you give it a few turns, usually 3 to 5 turns for most bows, to get to the proper playing tightness, okay? Now, the way they used to say you get the tightness back in the Royal Conservatory days was to put your pinky up against the gap, and it should be about the same size as your pinky. I have noticed that bows have all different gaps that work for them, so it's more of a feel thing. You have to get it to feel right, The problem is, if it's too tight, it bounces. If it's too loose, it bounces. So you have to try to kind of feel it out and get the right tightness for you. But it's always between 3 and 5 turns. And then when you're finished playing, it's very important to loosen it off again, the 3 to 5 turns. Because if you leave tension on your bow, then the curve in the stick that the violin maker puts on there by heating up the stick and then bending it over his knee like this until he gets the right arc in the stick. So, and it's a lot of work and time consuming. So if you leave the tension on the bow, the stick will get straighter and straighter and straighter, and eventually it'll lose all of its spring power. So that's why we have to loosen off the hair every time we put it back in the case. All right? So anyway, so that's how that works. Now the frog itself went through a lot of changes too. The back in the Baroque days, it was kind of just this little round thing, and it did not have very good control. They also played around with different designs of how the hair got held. There was one that had like a glass marble in the middle of this curly-Q thing, and the hair was supposed to be kind of wound around the marble, and the other designs too. But this is what prevailed. And this was invented by a French bow maker sometime in the late 1600s, early 1700s, and that's why it's called a frog now, because back in those days they called French people eaters of frogs. Anyway, this is my cat Tibbs. We just got him.
Very cute.
And my son Jerome, who's 10 years old, called him Tibbs. I have no idea where he'd heard that name before, but anyway, I think it's pretty good. So yeah, so that's how the frog works, okay? And that's why they call it a frog, which was a mystery to me just until about 2 years ago when I was talking to a classical violinist and she told me why they call it a frog. So anyway, so those are the parts of the bow: the tip, the stick, the hair, the frog, the tightening screw. This is called the grip. My grip is silver. The reason that they use silver is to get the weight absolutely right. And it's a big part of the balance of the instrument. And I remember when my grip let go one time, I brought it down to Heinel thinking it was going to be a quick fix. $120 later, I got the new grip because it is real silver, and they had to take it completely off and start again to get it right. So it is an important part of the bow and the balance of the bow, okay? Now the hair, everybody knows that it's horsehair, of course. It comes from a horse's tail. Most of the horses that produce hair for our bows live in northern Mongolia. And they have a pretty idyllic life for a horse. All they do is wander around and eat grass, and once in a while somebody comes up behind them and cuts their tail off. They don't even notice. They go back to eating grass, and that's where we get our bow hair. The reason that they use horses from that climate is because the hair is tougher, all right, from the northern climates. Also, they use the prized hair for bows is from a male horse, a stallion, because females tend to pee on their tails all the time, and it affects the hair, it damages the hair. And so that's why the prized hair is from a stallion from northern Mongolia. It's very interesting to me that there's all these horses in northern Mongolia that give us bow hair. Anyway, so that's the bow. So now we got figured out the exact setup of the fiddle and how it works and the bow. Does anybody have any questions about either of those things? Yes.
I have a cake of. Sorry. You want me to go?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. I have a cake of resin that's really old. Do they die? Like, should I use it?
Can I see what you have?
Pretty old.
Yeah. Now, what's it go in? Does it usually have a little box or something like that?
No, it hasn't been stored in a box.
If it hasn't been stored in anything, it's probably dried out by now. See, now the problem, I read all about it there not long ago about rosin because mine broke during the COVID thing, right? Right before the COVID thing, my rosin broke, and I was using a bit of it. I was using a piece of it. I noticed after about 2 weeks, I was getting a lot of these kind of little micro, these little micro squeaks and whistles and stuff like that. And so I did some research, and yes, indeed, rosin can dry out. That's the big thing. It loses its emulsion, and then it becomes more of a problem than not having rosin, because when it dries out, it becomes crystalline, and it can collect on the edges of your hair and make all these squeaks and whistles that are unnecessary and unwanted. See what I mean? So I think it's probably a good idea to get yourself a brand new fresh cake of rosin and make sure you keep it in a little, like half of the reason I like this rosin, this is my favorite rosin, it's called Melante de Roux. It's kind of in the middle of dark and light. The darker the rosin, the more grabby it is, the stickier it is. That's why they use dark rosin for cellos and basses. And they produce dark rosin by tapping the trees in the wintertime rather than in the springtime. So the springtime you get light rosin, the wintertime you get dark rosin, and it's much stickier. So I don't recommend it, usually. For beginners, really sticky rosin can be a pain. If I were you, I'd just get something like in the middle. The most common kind that you can get is Heidersign. It's an English rosin. It's really good. And it comes in a handy little tin. And that's what I was going to say. That's half of the reason I love this stuff so much. This is in the middle between light and dark. And the reason I love it so much is that it has this really awesome little plastic container. It never dries out. It's really, really good. See what I mean? So yeah, so it can get past its sell-by date and cause you more problems than having no rosin.
So sorry, go ahead.
What's that?
Oh, I thought someone else was talking. I can hear myself echoing, and so I'm thinking I'm talking over someone else.
That's okay. Go. What were you going to say?
English?
English. Heidersign, it's called. That's what I recommend. Mine's really good, but it's really good if you know what you're doing, you know? Whereas Heidersign is kind of good across the board. It's what I used growing up, you know, that type of thing. Okay? Anybody else have any questions about the bow or the fiddle? Yes, Lena.
I've lost quite a few string hairs off my bow. How do you know when you've lost enough strings that you need a new bow?
Okay, well, first of all, let me see what you got there. Oh, geez, I
I think it's okay for now. But...
Okay, hold that up real close and let me see. Okay, no, you're not doing too badly.
I've seen in the middle.
Yeah, I've seen a lot worse. Now the problem you should definitely get a rehair for sure. Okay. Now if you a rehair is when they replace the hair on your bow. I have to get it done, say twice or 3 times a year, depending on how much I'm playing. Okay. The guy at Heinel, Andreas, told me when I got my first rehair, he told me that it looked, by the looks of my bow, that I do about 6 years of playing in about 1 year. Because I play a lot. I play for hours every day, and that's not even when there's gigs, which there are no gigs right now. Like, it's a lot of playing. So I have to get mine done 3 times a year. Most people will have to get theirs done once every couple of years if if you're just a regular person that plays here and there. But the problem is when you start to lose your hair, it does weird things to the rosin, and it does weird things to the hair itself because it can create these clumps. And the clumps are a real problem. I actually keep a little comb, a fine-tooth comb in my case for when my bow is getting pretty bad, and I take it and I kind of comb the clumps out, you know, if it's like close to a time when I need a rehair. So that's going to cause you a lot of problems, and it's also going to be hard to get a decent sound with hair missing like that. So a rehair is only $80, and I'm going to tell you it's one of the best things ever. The only thing better than having new hair on your bow is having new strings and new hair at the same time, which I presently have, which is awesome. Okay, because you get the fresh new strings, which have the most sound, and you get that brand new hair, which gives you a really good sound. So I would recommend it. It only costs $80, and you'll be good for a couple of years or more. Okay. Anybody else have any questions at all? Anything? No. Good. Okay. So now let's talk about holding the fiddle. All right. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you guys the 3 steps to holding the fiddle properly, okay? Many adults that I teach struggle with the wrong way to hold the fiddle for like 10 years, and it can make life really difficult, okay? So I'm going to show you what they call the easy way or the right way, and then I want to see everybody else holding their fiddle, and we're going to talk about the way you hold your fiddle, and if you don't even know how to hold it, then you're going to find that out too, okay? So first of all, I'm going to start with the fiddle. Now, the fiddle, People often think that the fiddle gets held kind of in front of you like this, but that's not the case. The fiddle gets placed on your left shoulder. See that? So you put the fiddle, step 1, you put the fiddle on your left shoulder. Step 2, you rotate your head a little bit so that you can see down the neck and at the scroll, okay? And once you do that, that means that the corner of your jaw kind of sinks into that chin rest. You can feel it. And then you lean the weight of your head into that chin rest and you're holding the fiddle. See that? Now, right now, I am not tensing any muscles. I am completely relaxed and the weight of my head is holding that fiddle on my shoulder really comfortably. That leaves my left hand completely free to have full access to the fingerboard and do all that dexterous finger work without having to hold up the fiddle at the same time. Okay, which is a problem that many adults battle for a long time without realizing it. Holding the fiddle and playing it at the same time is really hard. It creates tension in your left hand, it slows you down, and it makes you tired. So yeah, that's how you hold it. Step 1, on your left shoulder. Step 2, rotate the head a little bit. Step 3, lean the head in, and you're holding it. Okay? Now let's everybody try holding your fiddle, and I want to see what you got going on. All right? So just put her up there. Okay. Now, Sherry, you might need a shoulder rest. Have you ever heard of a shoulder rest? Oh, you're muted.
I actually have one, and I took it off.
Okay. Now, a shoulder rest, most adults need a shoulder rest that I have taught. My brother Sean is one of the only people that I know, well, my brother Sean and my friend Brian Tahany from Sligo, Ireland, are some of the only people that I know that play without a shoulder rest. Okay? Now, Sean is an anomaly. He did his whole degree at Acadia. He never used it once, ever. I never used it growing up because people in Cape Breton don't. Now, my father, on the other hand, as soon as they were available in the early 80s, he started using them. And he said that before that, all you could get was the Menuhin shoulder rest, was this little pad, you know, that you put, that had 3 elastics on it that you put on the back of your fiddle the elastics went to the bee stings there and the button. And he said it was useless, but it was the only thing. And then as soon as these Kuhn shoulder rests came along, he started using them and always did. It really depends on your body. But I'm looking at you, Sherry. You have a long neck. You're definitely going to need a shoulder rest. No question about it. See, what the shoulder rest does is it fills in the gap between shoulder and chin. And if there is a gap between shoulder and chin, this is what happens. See that? And that is killer. That slows you down, creates problems with your left arm, and makes it uncomfortable to play. See that? You don't want to have to hold it up with your shoulder or your arm. You want the fiddle to just sit there. Okay? So why don't you slap your shoulder rest on and see if that helps.
I'm going to do that. Thanks.
Okay. Now let's see who else we got going here. Let's take a look at Joanne. That looks really good, Joanne. Drop your left arm there for me. Drop your left arm down like this. Oh, that looks excellent. Now, that looks to me like you're comfortable, like you don't have to tense anything, and the fiddle is just sitting there. Is that right?
Well, right now, yeah, but I have been having sore neck issues, so obviously was doing something wrong.
Now, with the sore neck...
I think I tense up when I play.
Well, yeah, everybody tenses up when they play. Everybody, including me. And so that's something you got to take into account because, for instance, with the shoulder rest, even though it helps with that shoulder coming up, right? Even though it really helps with that, it still wants to come up.
Yeah.
You know, even me, I have to keep my eye on it all the time. I have to think about it and actively relax it. Otherwise, it just wants to come up. It's just a natural reaction. And so I find one thing I've noticed that really helps with that is to just try to breathe. Just try at some point to exhale, and you should start to relax those shoulders and relax the neck. Now, you were talking about neck pain, and that's probably from clamping down on the fiddle, and you don't need to. The weight of your head should be enough. Now you play around with that a little bit, and then I'll revisit you and see how you're doing, okay? Now how about you, Nancy? Let's see you holding it. That looks great. Really good. You feel comfy?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying about it's going to have some, you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
And also, it's a little unnatural, I think.
It's a lot unnatural. I mean, when you think about it, this is what they used to do to American soldiers in the Japanese POW camps for torture. Make them hold their arm up like this for 3 hours. We do it willingly. So no, it's not a natural position. That's why I say you have to keep your eye on it. You have to feel if you're tensing or not and constantly relax. But that looks really good. What I like about your hold there is it looks like your shoulder rest is working perfect.
Yeah, I can feel it in both places. So
Good.
Yeah, thanks.
Good. Now, okay, let's see who else we got. Sherry, let's see how you're doing now. That shoulder rest. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay. That looks really good. Now, I still feel like you feel like you have to kind of hold your arm up like that to hold the fiddle up. And that could mean that you have to just adjust that shoulder rest a little bit as you're learning how to use it. Now, everybody here has a shoulder rest, eh? Yeah, okay. Check out the shoulder rest. Now, mine is called Everest. It's a really good one. It's a big, beefy one. See that? Now, I also have a Kun, which is this one here, which is the foldable, collapsible one. See that? And that's also really good. And what I really like about it is that it fits in my case. Because I did leave a few of them around. That's the problem with them. You leave them at gigs and stuff like that. But this one here, the Everest, I really love because it's big and beefy and it never moves once I put it on my fiddle. Now, when you put it on there, the revolutionary thing about these shoulder rests when they first came out was the adjustability of them. There was no shoulder rests that were this adjustable before they came out. And the ways that you can adjust those shoulder rests are, first of all, with most of them, you can adjust where the rest is in relation to the feet. So you can move it. In this one, there's 3 holes that you can use for the feet. 3 different positions of holes that you can use to put these feet on. And that makes the shoulder rest move this way on the fiddle or that way on the fiddle. On the new Kun, it's really easy. It's got these sliders. See that? And you just pick that up and slide them out and slide them back in. It's really nice and adjustable because every fiddle is slightly different diameter. See that? Not only that, where you put the fiddle or where you put the shoulder rest on the fiddle affects how it sits on your shoulder. Some people need their shoulder rest to be right up at the end of the fiddle, up like this. Okay? Some people need them to be all the way down, like even further than mine. Mine's kind of in the middle. See that? And that's why you can adjust the width of the feet, because you need it in a different place on your fiddle depending on your neck and your shoulder. So that's the first way that they're adjustable. The second way is that you can turn the legs out and make the whole thing higher or lower. See that? Depending on what you need. The whole purpose of the shoulder rest is for this part here to come down and meet my chest and hold up my fiddle for me, right? Hold that up, brace that up there. And so you can check that out. You can check out your chest and your neck and see where it lands. And if it's not quite making it all the way down there, you can extend these feet and make that longer to come down further or whatever you need. And so for Sherry, with the longer neck, you might have to turn both of them out to create a little bit more space there. See that? It really depends. And I messed around with my shoulder rest for a good long time before I found the least uncomfortable place for it. It's kind of like picking your cleanest dirty shirt. You know, you have no choice. You just gotta mess with it until it feels the least uncomfortable. Because playing the fiddle is uncomfortable. That's just the way it is. I had a massage therapist once that worked on a Lorena McKenna tour. And she said she worked on the fiddle player on that tour for the entire 6-month tour, every day, to battle what she called the terrible twist. And I really love that way of putting it because that's what it is. So all of these things we're doing are trying to mitigate the discomfort. Okay? So that's the shoulder rest. Now let's see somebody else holding their fiddle. How about Cindy? Okay. Now that looks pretty good. Pretty good. Are you tensing anything to do that, or is it just natural? Oh, you're muted.
Not as much as I was when I didn't put my bottom piece on. I found it awkward, and then when you reminded me about that, I find it it's not too, well, not comfortable, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not bad.
Yeah, no, it looks really good. And it looks like you're doing that very naturally and it's sitting there nice. So you might have to mess with it a little more, but that's a good start. Okay? Now,
Okay.
Elaine, I know you got a good fiddle hold because I've hammered away at you on it already. Let's see you hold your fiddle and we can show everybody a good way to hold it. Yeah, see, that's perfect. You see how she's leaning her head in like that? That's great. And also, it makes you be able to hear your fiddle a little bit better. The great masters, they used to say that the F hole, when you lean your ear towards the F hole, it's like putting headphones on of your own fiddle. And it's true. I had a teacher when I was in Halifax. I was 13. This particular teacher, all he did was work on my sound production for the entire year that I was studying with him. And using the ear against the F hole was a big part of that because you can listen deep into your sound and make it really what you want. Now, apparently the great masters were all addicted to it and they all had hearing problems in their left ear because whenever you look at, like if you look at a video of Yehudi Menuhin, he looks like this. He's got his head laying on the fiddle because he's just addicted to that sound. You know what I mean? Now you got to be careful because it can cause hearing damage. So they say that you're only supposed to do that once in a while. You're supposed to keep it to a minimum and try not to have your ear glued to it. Okay? But anyway, so that's a really good hold there, Elaine. You got the idea very well. Let's see somebody else. How about you, Lena? You already got her up there. Perfect. Look at Lena. Perfect already. That's great. And you feel comfy like you can... Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Very good. How about you, Shona? Let's see yours. It's good, eh? Cool.
I mean, this chin rest is digging in a little bit here, but I think...
Okay, now if the chin rest is digging into your neck, there's a couple of things you can do about that. You might have to adjust your shoulder rest to be a little bit further down on the fiddle to get it away from your neck.
Okay.
Also, if it's not wide enough, if the whole shoulder rest is not kind of tall enough, I guess I'm going to say, then you can't, it goes in too much. Like it goes in there too deep and it's going to dig in there all the time. So you might consider lengthening it a bit. You just mess around with it and see if you can get it away from your neck. Now, if it's such that you can't get it away from your neck, because I know many classical violinists who can't, and what they do is they put a cloth right over. Because I know one guy that's actually allergic to ebony. And so he has to put that cloth over there because his neck breaks right out like crazy. That looks really good, Shona. Really good. But I would definitely play with that height a little bit. See if you can get it more comfortable. Now, who else? How about Katya? Katya's got it going on real good there, too. Really good. That looks comfy and easy. Okay? So now let's everybody practice holding the violin a couple of times. So give a fiddler roll out the shoulders and then go through the 3 steps. Slap around the left shoulder, twist the head a bit, lean in, holding the fiddle. And it's a really good idea to practice doing that a couple of times so that it becomes automatic. Those 3 steps. Put it on your shoulder, turn the head, lean in, holding the fiddle. Okay? So that's how you hold the fiddle. And like I said, you'll have to mess with your shoulder rests until they start to feel comfy and more familiar to what you're doing. Okay? Mr. Tibbs is making another appearance. Now, let's talk about holding the bow. Because like I said, that's easily the hardest part. So we hold the bow down near the frog, and I'm sure most of everybody's figured that out already. But down where the grip, and they call this the grip, and that's where we put our hand, okay? Now the bow hold, for complete beginners, I always suggest the Suzuki Beginner Bow Hold, which is the thumb right on the bottom of the frog, flat like this, and the fingertips spread across the top of the bow like this. See that? That's the complete beginner bow hold. Now, I've had really good results using that for people that have never tried to play and are just getting started. It can be a really good way to get started. Okay, so that's the thumb on the bottom of the frog, flat, and the fingertips. No, so not like this, just the fingertips spread out across the top of the stick of the grip. Okay, now that's the complete beginner bow hold. I'm going to show you the real bow hold because I want you to know what you're shooting for and how the hand actually holds the bow. So the real bow hold is where your thumb comes up under the bow like this, right between the grip and the frog, and it's up under like this, like straight up. So there's going to be a little curl in the thumb where it points straight up. And the purpose of the thumb is to be the fulcrum for the teeter-totter. See that? The round part of your thumb being the place where the bow can pivot. That's the purpose of the thumb. And that's why we have to keep it curled like that, because if it was stiff, that couldn't happen. See that? So that's what the thumb does. The first finger has 4 jobs. Its first job is to bear down and give a little weight to the bow. Its second job is to pick up. See that? Because when you get near, if you're doing an up bow and you're getting near the frog, it's going to start to be really crunchy, way too much weight into the strings. And so you pick up on the bow with that finger and you get the weight off of the strings. The third job it has is that you hook it in with your finger and it steers towards you like this. See that? And then the other job it has is what you put, if you push gently with your thumb against that finger, then you can go out too. So the 4 jobs of the first finger are to bear down, pick up, steer in, and steer out. Okay, that's the 4 jobs. It's really the most important part of the bow hold, and it's what we're going to focus on a lot. These 2 fingers here have a very simple job, and it's just to control the pitch of the bow. So this is what they call the pitch of the bow. Just like the pitch on a ship, when a ship is doing that in the water. The bow does that too on the strings. As you move it back and forth, it kind of pitches a little bit. See that? And they used to say, every bow pitches, you want to try to keep it to a minimum. All right? When you're using half the hair on the bow, you risk squeaks and scratches and stuff. So you want to keep that hair on there. And that's what these fingers do here. They control it from pitching too much. They're like a guardrail. They also help a little bit in the picking up. You can see there. See that? They kind of get up under there a little bit and help with the picking up. This finger here, the pinky, has 1 job and 1 job only, and it's to counteract the weight of the stick. See that? And so that's why you might see fiddle players, they're playing kind of up in this part of the bow, like that, and you see that they do not have their pinky or their third finger on the bow at all. And that's why you see that, because you don't need to counteract the weight of the stick when you're using this part of the bow. But as soon as I get up past the middle part, I have to engage that pinky. See that? Otherwise, the bow's going to flop over like that. And so that's the job of the pinky. And they used to stress that it should never be rigid. It should always have a little curve to it so that you can let it react to the action of the bow. So that's how you hold the bow. That's your eventual goal with holding the bow. Thumb up under the stick to be a fulcrum. First finger wraps right around the stick with a little bit of the tip of the finger being under the stick. These 2 fingers control the pitch of the bow and help a little bit in the picking up. So they just lay over the side of the frog like that. And the pinky is just to control the weight of the stick, counteract the weight of the stick, and it just sits on there like that with a little bit of a bend in it if possible. And that's a good bow hold. See that? Okay. So let's try doing it a few times. So just whether you're using the beginner one or the real one, it doesn't matter. But we'll just shake that hand out and we'll try holding that bow. Put those fingers in place. See how it comes out. Okay. Now, Katya, that looks pretty good, but you could curl your finger right around that bow stick a little bit more so that you could pick up on it if you need to. Okay? Let's see what else we got. That's really good there, Sherry. You might want to straighten out your hand so that it's not so Not so much like this, but more like this. Okay? Let's see. Lena, awesome, looking really good. Shona, that's looking good. You might want to, yeah, just have a little bit more of a curl to it. Because remember, with the bow hold, this is your shock absorbers. Okay? Your bow is the tire, but these are your shocks. And so this is where you're going to try not to feel all the bumps in the road. And that's why rigid is not good. You want kind of curled and curved all the time. Let's see you, Cindy. Pretty good. Yep, that's going to be really good. How about Katya? Is good. Nancy, let's see yours. You pick your hand up a little bit so I can see it there.
Yeah.
Now, that's good. Let's see if you can have more flat, like less kind of curved like this and more just flat. Yeah. That's really good. That looks really good. See that? Now you got all your fingers in the right places to do the jobs. Okay? Let's see Joanne. Looking great, Joanne. Very, very good. Is that everybody? How about Shona? Let's see yours, Shona. Oh, I talked to you already. Okay, we're good. So everybody has a decent bow hold there. Let's practice it one more time. Shake it out. Hold that bow. Looking good. Looking good, looking good. Okay, very good. Very good. Now, oh, Shona's having problems. Having pain problems. She's a jeweler, so it's probably your job. Oh, yeah. Yikes. Anyway, so gentle. Okay, so that's the bow hold, all right? Now, again, this is something that you're going to modify. Like I told you the starting point, but you're going to have to investigate your hand and get it to work in a comfortable way that works for you. My main consideration that I like to let people in on when it comes to your bow hold is you're trying to make your life as easy as possible. When I play a jig or a reel, all I'm doing with this bow hold is trying to boil it down to do everything with a little nudge and a push. And that's it. See what I mean? You're trying to take work out of it all the time. So when you're practicing your bow hold, you keep that in mind. Anything that seems like extra work, get rid of it. Boil it down to those few things that I mentioned, and you should get along okay. All right? Now, that's holding the bow, and that's holding the fiddle. Now let's talk about bowing the strings. So, when we bow the strings, obviously, you put the bow between the bridge and the fingerboard, okay? Now, that's kind of important because the closer you get to the bridge, the more susceptible you are to squeaks and whistles like you wouldn't believe, all right? Now, the classical guys that I know that have 2 and 3 degrees, they can play up there. They play close to the bridge, and they use it as a volume control. Because basically, the closer you get to the bridge, the harder it is to vibrate the string. All right? And the way that I explain that always is, if you've ever been to Halifax or any city that has a suspended bridge, right? A cable bridge. If you went up to the middle of one of those gigantic big cables that are this wide, if you went up to the middle of one of them, you could probably take your finger and pluck that cable and it would probably vibrate, just like a guitar string. If you went down to where it joins the bridge and tried to pluck it, you would never do it in a million years. It would never move, all right? It's the same thing with the string. If I pluck the string here, I get a nice, clean, clear pluck. See that? If I do it here, you hear that pinch that goes along with the sound there? Okay, that your bow does exactly the same thing to it. And that's really risky for squeaking. The kids that I teach up in Manitoulin Island, they call it the death zone. So basically, anywhere from the top holes down to the bridge is the death zone. And you want to avoid it. In Suzuki, they have a great way of dealing with it. They put a sticker across the fiddle on the up northern side of the F holes, and the kids are encouraged to move the bow in line with the sticker. And it really helps to keep away from that bridge, okay? You can probably do it without the sticker, but I like to mention it because it's such a such a sticking point with lots of people, especially adults. I've taught this one guy, he could not keep his bow off of the bridge at all. And so I actually got a straw from my drink and I cut it in half and I put one half in here and one half in here, and that was his guardrail. And it kept him off of the bridge, and it worked. Eventually, it worked. He ended up being able to play away from the bridge, okay? So that's where you want the bow. That's the ideal spot right there, just past the end of the fingerboard and not too close to the bridge. Now, if you start to get further down the neck, then you risk scratchiness, and the strings are really close to each other there, so you end up touching the other strings that you don't want to touch all the time, the further down you wander. So you want to keep it to about here, okay? And you can see on my fiddle, my rosin marks, you can kind of see that that's where I play all the time. You see that? Okay, so that's where the bow goes. And when we bow the strings, when you pull the bow this way, that's a down bow because the frog is going towards the floor. When you push the bow, but I hate to say push the bow, my dad's teacher used to say you never push the bow. You always pull the bow, which is true. So when you pull the bow up, you keep it in the straight line there between the bridge and the fingerboard, and you pull the bow down, same thing. See that? Now watch what my arm has to do to make those straight. You see how my wrist and my elbow are kind of moving in concert to make that bow go straight. See that? This is the most common problem for adults. Sound familiar for anybody? So, and the way to battle that is to keep the elbow stationary, move from the elbow down, and allow that wrist to bend and make the bow straight. Now, if you have a lot of problems doing that at first, there's a great little thing that the Suzuki kids do where they hold the bow in front of them like this and they move it straight up to the ceiling and straight down between their legs. See that? And you can see what your wrist has to do to keep the bow straight. You can see the bending that it has to do. And we have to do the same thing here. See that? Same exact thing. Okay? That can be very handy for lots of people. Now, what I always like to talk about with bowing the strings is what my dad's teacher used to say, which is the bow is shaped like this, okay? And so when we bow the strings, we kind of move that way as well. When we're at the heavy end, we really don't have to dig in a lot because that's where all the weight is and everything, so the bow kind of looks like this. As we get to the middle, we start to add the weight because this is the empty end of the bow, the empty end of the pickup truck. There's no weight there, right? So we have to add the weight with this finger. So it kind of looks like this. And then as we get to the end, that's kind of the most weight. And so it kind of looks like this. See that? And then when we do the up bow, it's kind of the opposite motion. See that? So you're kind of digging in, and as you move along, that's where the weight is. So now we're picking up. We're trying to pick the weight up off the bow as you approach the frog. And so it looks like this. This is an exaggerated view of what my dad's teacher used to call bow-shaped bowing. See that? And it keeps the bow, it keeps the hair into the strings the whole time, right from one end to the other, consistently, okay? So why don't you guys try a little bit of that right now? And this is what I like to get people to do. Start on the G string and do down bow and then up bow. Move on to the D. Then the A. Then the E. And then go back the other way too. Okay, so we want a clean down bow and a clean up bow. You want to try not to touch other strings or crunch or bounce or anything like that, okay? So give it a try. Give a down bow and an up bow starting on the G string and go to each string, all right? Give that a try there now. Okay, so first of all, I'll talk to Sherry first because I have a really good shot of you. And I noticed that you're doing pretty good. I noticed that you're going from string to string like this. Okay? And this right elbow is going to go down here and stay here. It doesn't need to move up and down at all. They call that the funky chicken. So it's just about here, and so not tight and not up in the air, just about like this. Okay? And so then when you move to string from string to string, it's like this rather than like this. Okay? Give that a try. Now, yeah, oh, that's better. That's better. Yeah. That's good. Looking good. Everybody's looking real good there. Okay, now how does that feel, Sherry?
Good. And I think the problem, I was sitting down. As soon as I stood up, I had much more range of motion.
Yes, and standing up is the best way to play. There's no question about it. Whenever I go in the studio, I'm always standing up. Traditionally, we sit down, but that's only because I can drive my foot against the floor properly. You know, that's why I need to sit down. But yes, standing is definitely going to be the best and most comfortable way to do it, for sure. Now, how are you doing there, Nancy? Let's see you doing it. I can't see you now. You stood up. Let's see you doing it. Okay, now right away I see a very common thing that happens, which is this. I call it knocking out people in the bank line behind you that you don't like. See that? So keep that elbow in one place. And look, when I'm finished my down bow, my arm is straight out in front of me, and my wrist is as far back as it can go. You see that? When I'm finished my up bow, I'm a chicken wing. See that? Okay, try her again. That's better. That's better. Okay. Now that's much better. You getting the idea?
I think so. So the hair on the bow is the contact to the string. Is it flat on?
Pretty well. It pitches. Yeah, it pitches a little bit, you know, but it's pretty well flat. Watch me do it again. Okay?
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Now, how about you, Joanne? How are you doing? Let's see you bow a little bit. Okay, now, Joanne, you're doing really good on the down bow. It looks like this, and I know that you've been working on it and you're getting somewhere. So your down bow looks good. Your up bow looks like this. You do good. You do really good until about here, and then your arm takes over and you do that. Okay? So try to keep it like this. Better. That's better. Okay. That's much better. Now let's pick on somebody else. How about Cindy? Let's see you bowing a little bit. Yep, that looks really good. Now you got kind of the opposite thing going on as Joanne did. For you, it's on the down bow. So you do pretty good. I'll show you. So you do pretty good until about here, and then your arm takes over and it looks like this. See that? Yeah. So normal thing, and all you want to do to avoid that is when I'm finished my down bow, check it out. See that? My hand is back, and my fingers are out, and I'm trying to straighten out that bow. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, that's much better. Yeah. That's great. And you got a much more range of motion that way too. You can use more of the bow effectively. Okay, very good. Now how about Katya? So let me see you doing it. Okay. Now that looks really good. And I remember we were working on this before, that sound production thing. And you're doing really good. You're looking great there. One thing that's happening to you though, which is again a common thing, is that when you're finished your up bow, this happens. See that? The bow is kind of falling over at the end of the up bow. And so that's where you want to pick up. And if I don't pick up, it does that.
Yeah, that's because I'm, when I see, is there an echo? Come on. Oh, it's, I sort of have to make an effort to make it look like this.
Right. Okay. And that's good.
It doesn't come naturally.
Yes, I hear you. I hear you. But it is looking good. It is looking really good. You just might need to just kind of poke down on that bow a little bit more to keep it from falling over there at the end of the up bow. Okay? Okay. Now let's see who else. Lena, you're looking good. Let me see you bow the strings a little bit. That's really good. That's really good. Oh, one thing I noticed, which is something that I do all the time, is you did really good on the G, D, A, and then when you moved to the E string, this happened. Okay? And I found myself doing that ages and ages ago. I found myself doing that. And so to counteract it, when I go to the E, I just let my arm do it. I can't seem to not do it. So instead of that, I just let my arm do it and I shoot these fingers out a little bit to keep the bow straight. See that? Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so watch out for the tucking the elbow in for the E string. It's a very common problem that I also have. Okay? Now, is that everybody? Did I look at everybody's bowing? Oh, Shona, let's see yours. Really good. Really good. Do you see how straight that bow is moving between the fingerboard and the bridge? And I can see your hand reacting to it. Very good. Very good. Now, here's a couple of things that can accelerate the process. If you're having a problem of the wandering elbow, when you're at home and you're trying to play and that elbow keeps getting in the game and you don't want it to, then you can use the doorway. Now, this is something my brother made us do when I was little. My camera is hard to move, so I'm going to grab something here. I'm going to use this mic stand as a doorway, okay? So picture this is the side of a doorway, and I'm sitting inside the doorway. And I got my fiddle, or standing, I should say. And then what I used to do was I sit with my elbow right in front of the door jamb. And so that means that if I move my elbow, I get a little bump. See that? And so then when I'm moving this bow, it's there keeping my elbow from doing that thing. See that? And it can be really good. And my brother had us doing it quite a lot. Now, he was my older brother, so I'm not sure how much of it was just plain torture and how much of it was actually useful. But certainly we did it quite a lot, playing in the doorway. It can be very useful. It can also help with that thing I was talking about with Sherry, moving from string to string like this because, again, the door jamb is there. And so if you go to do that, you get the little bump and you stop doing it, you know? And the bump seems to really work for most people. My dad used to have a saying, even a pit pony only has to hit his head a couple of times before he learns to duck. So anyway, the doorway can be a really useful way to get that elbow out of the game and to get the bowing from the elbow down. And you see how my wrist moves like that. See that? It's Mr. Miyagi Paint the Fence. Here's my down bow. My wrist leads the movement and the hand and the fingers in the bow trail behind. And the up bow is exactly the same. The wrist leads and everything else trails behind. And that's how we move the bow. And it's really important for fiddle players, almost more so than classical players, because we're constantly turning the bow around, right? We do it the whole time we're playing. see how I'm doing that, just you boil that movement down. Now, back in the Royal Conservatory days, they used to say that you work on the bow arm big to small. So you first work on using the whole bow. Everything involved with it. How much you dig in, how much you back off, everything. The whole thing, right from one end to the other. And then, as you use less and less bow because you're going faster or whatever, you have to keep in mind that all these movements that I talked about, the bearing down, the picking up, everything, is still there, except that it's happening with what I call my second bow arm. Okay? This is my second bow arm. From the wrist down is most of, I shouldn't call it my second bow arm, it's really my first bow arm because most of my fiddling is done from the wrist down. And the arm gets in the game when I have to do a big slur or have to put some power out. Let me just show you so you know I'm not lying. Watch this right hand really close. See that? How much did I actually use my arm? Very little. Just on the big endings when I do the big slurs. That's the only time I use that. So yeah, so this is my, this is my big bow arm and this is my small bow arm. And so everything you learn on the big scale to make the sound good, you have to do on the small scale using this bow arm. And so you picture it just like an arm. Here's the upper part, here's the lower part, this is your wrist. As you do all those same movements as best you can on the small scale, but we're going to start on the large scale. Okay? Now, so that's holding the bow and making the sound. A really good thing to do when you first start playing the fiddle is to just do tons of that. Okay? One down bow and up bow on each string, starting on the G, trying to get that sound working so that it doesn't surprise you, so that you don't have a lot of bounces. The thing you want to avoid are a whole lot of bouncing on your down bow, the bow swerving and sliding on the ice as it goes, especially on the up bow. That can be really, really bad on the up bow. So that's the other thing you want to avoid. And you want to try to judge how much you dig in to give you the good sound. And the thing is about it, it's a very personal thing. Everybody's fiddle is different, everybody's hand is different, everybody's bow is different. So you have to discover on your own how much you have to dig in to get a decent sound and no more. Now let me give you a couple of examples of digging in. So here's the sound when you're digging in too much. You hearing that? That's when I'm digging in too much. It does a couple of things. First of all, it chokes the string. Do you hear that chokiness to the sound when I do that? And it's because it's just, I always say that vibrating a string is like dribbling a basketball, right? You get that nice rhythm going, and it's very gentle. And then as soon as I go like this, then the ball's going to stop bouncing. It's going to just roll away. Same with the string. Soon as you push too hard, you choke it from vibrating and you get that choky noise instead of a good noise. Okay? So that's this, and then you get the crunch too. You get that terrible, awful sound as well. Okay? So that's the sound of digging in too much. Here's the sound of not digging in enough. Especially on the E string, it's just awful. See, you hear that sound, you hear that. It's occasional harmonics. That's what's going on. That's what that whistle is. And I read that what the physics behind it is that, like I said before, the bow goes through a slip, grip, slip, grip, slip, grip cycle. If you don't dig in enough, it goes grip, slip, grip, slip, slip. And that's what gives you a harmonic instead of a proper vibrating string. You see that? So that's the sound of not digging in enough. You guys are going to try to go right from one end of the bow to the other all week. You're going to try to keep that right elbow stationary so that it's not wandering around and knocking people out behind you. And you're going to keep the bow straight between the bridge and the fingerboard, and that's going to give you a decent sound. Okay, it's going to start to develop a decent sound with those things in place. I was talking about bounce. Now, the bounce is a big problem for lots of people. It happens on the down bow and it sounds like this. See if I can get it. I can never make it happen when I want to. There you go. You hear that? Hear that bounce there? There it is again, okay? So that's basically when you get a little bit of out of sync between the speed of your bow and how much you're digging in, basically, you know? I don't know if anybody here has ever used a table saw before. Probably not. But when you use a table saw, if you push the wood too slow, it burns. If you push the wood too fast, it goes ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. So you got to do the same thing with your bow. You got to judge the speed so that the bow doesn't want to do that bounce. The reason that it bounces, and it only bounces on the down bow, the up bow, this is not an issue. On the down bow, you get to the middle of the bow, and that's what I call the middle of the trampoline, the softest part of the bow. See that? And that's where you bottom out. Now you have a compressed spring. Now this spring wants to go boo like that for the rest of the way down the bow. So the way that I battle it is, you're moving along the down bow, you feel that place where your bow bottoms out, and you just let your finger go down there with the stick. And then as you come out of that compressed spring, gently you let the bow back up. See that? That's all you got to do. If you get the timing right, you can make that note nice and clean with no bounce, and it works really well. All right? Now, why don't you guys try a little bit of that, and then I'm going to pick on somebody and get them to do it for us so we can see how they're sounding. So, down bow and then up bow, starting on G, D, A, E, and then back. Okay? Give that a go, and then I'm going to see how we're doing. There you go. Okay, now let's hear some people. So first of all, how about Elaine? Why don't you give us some of those down bows and up bows? Because you've been working on it quite a lot and you've got pretty far with it. So let's hear that to start off with. That's really good. Really good. So you had a couple of instances of touching other strings, but otherwise there was no bounce, no crunch, no slide, no scrape. Really good. So do you guys hear that? That's a really good example of good, solid, clean notes from one end to the other. And Elaine has worked hard on that. Believe me, we worked hard on it. One of the main things that was such a problem before was constantly being on the other strings. Do you remember that, Elaine? The strings you don't want to be on. And so that took a lot of work of this here, you know, but that's much better. It's sounding great now. That's really good. Now let's say Nancy. Why don't you try it for us, Nancy, since you're brand new out of the box?
You sure you want it unmuted? Okay. Oh, sorry, on the G.
Okay. Yeah, now you're getting somewhere for sure. That's pretty good first attempt, that's for sure. Let me tell you something that I forgot to mention for everybody. Each string has a different plane of motion for the bow, and this could really help you a lot. The G string, the bow kind of goes up in the air. See that? Okay, it's like Saturday Night Fever or something like that. Okay, so it kind of goes up. The D and the A share almost the same plane of motion. See that? It's just right out to the side, straight on. The E, however, is straight up and down. See that? It's a drop. That's what my dad's teacher used to say. The D and the A are out to the side, but the E is a drop. And that's why violinists sit. The way that violinists sit usually is on the corner of their chair with their right leg dropped down as if they were genuflecting. And that's because to make room for the E string. See that? The bow drops down between the legs, and that's how we get the E. So G is up in the air, D and A are pretty well flat on, and E is a drop. Okay? Does that make sense, Nancy?
I think, yep. I
Okay.
think so.
Why don't you try it one more time with that in mind?
I will.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now that is better. Now, your big thing that you're going to battle is the elbow is in the game like crazy. Okay, so I would prescribe for you getting in the doorway. So when you're practicing this week, just do the whole time, just practice in the doorway, and that's going to straighten that wandering elbow out. Okay. How about you, Sherry? You want to give it a try?
Sure.
Because you're brand new too. Okay, now that's really quite good. The only thing for you, again, is that elbow kind of like when you start, your elbow kind of goes up like this. And then I see you kind of like, but it's still quite high.
Okay.
Okay, so just try to keep her kind of down here, and it really does not have to do any funky chicken at all. As much as you might feel like it should, it does not have to do that at all. Okay? But it's good. You got a good start there. Who else? How about Cindy? Let's see you do it. You're pretty new too, right?
The only thing is I haven't tuned it, and it hasn't been tuned in like 8 years.
Oh!
So I've been playing it, but it's not in tune.
Well, let's hear it.
You're not going to really want.
That's all right. Let me hear it anyway. I find that funny sometimes. Okay, now, first of all, yeah, cool. Now, first of all, your arm is, it's okay, it's okay. I can help with that, but first of all, your arm is moving really good. It looks really, really well controlled. Your elbow is not doing a whole lot, you know. So you are definitely going to have to tune your fiddle, though, because the other thing about bowing the strings that you guys will discover as you're exploring this is that each string requires a different weight. Okay, the G string and the G string are really loose. The A string has and when I'm talking about loose, I mean how tight they are down on the fiddle. Okay.
Okay.
The G and the D string are quite loose. All right. The A string has the average of pressure. That's what they say, the average of all four strings. The E string is tighter than all the other strings put together, okay? So the G and the D, they need a little bit of a nudge because they're big and heavy, but because they're so loose, you got to just move the bow and get out of the way, all right, to let them vibrate properly. The A has the average, so I find when I'm on the A, I have that little bit of weight on there and it's consistent the whole time I'm on the A. With the E is so tight, so high-strung, it needs no pressure at all, no weight at all. Usually whatever you just used for the A string is enough. And if you put even a little tiny bit of too much weight on the E, she squawks at you like crazy. See what I mean? So with your strings at a tune like that, that's going to throw that completely out of whack. So you're definitely going to have to tune the fiddle. Do you know how to tune the fiddle?
I have a tuner, this thing here, for my
Okay.
guitar. Is
Yep.
that so? I can just tune it with that?
Yes. Now the problem with that is you have to know what notes you're tuning to. Okay.
Right.
So we know the names of the strings, right? G, D, A, and E. But you have to know which octave you're tuning to, because when I was working at the music store in North York, I used to like sell a person a fiddle or rent them a fiddle and a tuner, and they would go home, a chromatic tuner, not a guitar tuner, but a tuner that will tune any note you play. And they'd go home and they'd come back the next day and the E string would be broken. And they'd have the fiddle and the tuner, and they'd say, something wrong with this, something wrong with this. And we discovered what was happening was they were trying to tune the E string to the octave above. And they end up breaking the string. So let me tell you what octaves your strings are. All right? Your A string is A4. Have you ever heard that term before? It means that it's the fourth A up from the bottom of the piano. The A above middle C. That's A4. Okay? Your D string is also D4. Your G string is G3. And your E string is E5. Okay, that's an octave above where middle C is there. So when you're trying to tune your strings, make sure you have the octaves right so you don't break one of your strings by accident. Okay? Also, when you tune your fiddle, and this is very important, when you tune your fiddle, you have to tune the A string first. Because of the pressures that I was talking about, how tight they are down on the fiddle, if you change the E string first, the bridge kind of goes, and then by the time you tune the other strings, it goes like this. And then you check your E, and now it has changed. And you got to chase it. You're chasing it and chasing it. It's a pain in the arse. So you tune your A string first because that has the average. Then you tune your D. Okay? Then you tune your G, and you leave the E string till the very end because it's so tight. It usually only needs a very small change anyway. Okay? So yeah, do those two things. Make sure you're tuning to the right octave and that you're tuning the strings in the right order. Joanne, you had a question?
I did, because I've been trying to tune mine as well, and I realized I'm way out of tune when I heard you playing, and I was trying to play the same notes. So I have one of these tuners as well, right?
Yep.
So when you say the A should be A4,
Yep.
when I play, or sorry, say for E, mine says E1
E1.
on this screen, on a little tuner. Like, how do I adjust the octave?
Well, you don't. I mean, that might not be referring to the octave. All the tuners are different, eh? Like they display different things. I don't know if that means the octave or not. Can you hold it up really close to the screen? See what kind it is? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't seen that kind before. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I'm not sure what that E1 is referring to, but it sounds like when you plucked it, you're pretty close. You're in the right octave.
Oh, yeah?
It sounded like it from my end. Yeah, just pluck your E string once more. Here's mine.
Yours is way different.
Play yours again, and then I'll play mine. That sounds the same to me.
You're higher.
I sound
Really?
higher to you?
Yeah, but you know what? There's a bit of a, I don't know if you're hearing it, but there's quite an echo tonight that we don't normally have on our other Zoom calls. So I wonder if that's why I'm hearing something different.
I don't hear any echo. I
think everybody's hearing an echo.
Really? I wonder what's happening there. I've never had that happen before.
Yeah, there's been an echo all evening, Dan.
So that means like when I say something, then it happens again?
Not
No.
you, but everybody else.
All of us.
Yeah.
Oh, that's strange. Okay, well, I'm not sure why that would be happening. We'll have to suss it out. At the beginning of next time, we'll suss it out. But anyway, but your E string sounds like it's almost in tune. So as long as it says E and you're getting in the ballpark there, you should be okay. Now, those clip-on tuners, the one that Cindy had there, that's a snark, okay? For clip-on tuners, I find that the snark is the best one that you can get right at this point, all right? What the problem with clip-on tuners is that they don't, like, they're okay for getting your fiddle in tune if you're backstage or at a session or something like that and it's really loud and you need to get your fiddle in tune. But for practicing, they don't do very good because when you use a tuner to practice, you want one that moves along with you. All right? So when you sharpen and flatten, it goes along with you. The clip-on ones don't usually do that. They usually just give you one reading, you know? The snark, though, it does do that. It does move with you, which is really handy. So it really depends on the tuner. Sometimes the clip-on tuners, they don't really get a good signal off your fiddle or something like that. You know what I mean? So just watch out for that. But that sounds like it's pretty close. Try your A string for me. Pluck your A string. A little louder. That sounds like it's pretty close to mine. Yeah. Okay. So that's.
Where's a good place to get a tuner? And you're suggesting not a clip-on one?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I use my tuning app. I'll show you what it is here.
Oh.
This is it. There you go. You kind of see it.
Right.
See that?
Yep.
And it's called tunable without the E, so tunnable. Okay, and it's really cheap.
Yep.
I think it was $5. And
okay.
I find it to be kind of the best one for practicing because when you get in tune, the screen fills out nice and green, which is pleasing. And it gives, the thing is with intonation on the violin, when you're trying to get in tune on the violin, it's not really that you're practicing it on the instrument. It's that you're trying to teach your ear what the note's supposed to sound like when you're in tune. And so having the tuner there can really give your ear that positive reinforcement that it is playing the note in tune. See that? That means the next time you try to mate that note, your ear is already going to know what it should sound like. See what I mean? So that's why using the tuner to practice is so handy. It can be a little disheartening at first. And that's why Tunable is so good because it has settings. So you can go into your settings here and you can choose, where is it now? Tuner settings. And you can choose intermediate, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. You can't, the light is not letting you see that. But yeah, there's 3 settings there, okay? I use mine on advanced, and when you put it on advanced, you can select vibrato width. Now, so that's you know what vibrato is, right? It's when when the violinist wiggles on the note like this.
Oh,
That's vibrato, okay? And vibrato is a very, very huge thing. We'll talk about it and we'll learn how to do it. The reason that vibrato was invented is because way back in the old days, they figured out that even if you have 15 of the best violinists in the world sitting there and they all played a B, you would have 15 different Bs. Okay? So they put the vibrato on there to kind of wiggle it out and kind of level it off. So when you have the tuner on the advanced setting, it has a little toggle for how wide your vibrato is so the tuner can take that into account. You see what I mean? For you guys, I would suggest beginner or intermediate. All right? Because it gets you in the ballpark. Trying to play in tune on the fiddle or even just tuning your fiddle is kind of like target practice. You just get better and better as you try to do it. You get closer to the mark. See what I mean? And so that's why using that tuner can be really handy. The old-fashioned way to do it was to have somebody playing the notes you're trying to play and you match them. right? Now I had my mother. My mother played every note that we played. She banged it out on the piano and asked us if it was in tune. I remember her, is that in tune? Trying to get us to make the decision, to hear the note, decide whether we were in tune, and fix it if we weren't in tune. That's what she was trying to do. And it really is the most direct way. But unfortunately, most of us don't have somebody that's going to sit there and play every note they're trying to play along with you, But that being said, there are some scales that you can get online that you can listen to and play along with and try to lock in with. I'm producing a whole bunch of videos that I'll be releasing soon that are me playing scales with the tuner on the music stand so that you can see that I'm in tune as you're playing along with me. See what I mean? So you can use things like that at this point, but the tuner is probably going to be your best weapon of choice for trying to get everything in tune for now, because we just have to teach the ear. Okay, does that help you, Joanne?
Yeah, I just searched for it. Is it tunable? Tunable?
Yes.
Okay, and it's a little pink circle with a note in the middle or something.
That's the one.
Okay.
Okay.
You.
Yeah, that's going to be really the best thing for you, because it also tells you what octave you're playing, what octave you're trying to play.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Has anybody else got any questions about tuning your fiddle? Because I heard Cindy needs to tune hers as well. And maybe Sherry or Nancy, maybe your fiddles are completely out of whack too. I remember when I worked at the music store, people used to come in just to get me to tune their fiddle. Because it's not easy. Tuning the fiddle is not easy. I couldn't properly tune my fiddle until I was about 14 or 15. And I remember that me and my dad and my brother and my other brother Marty, we would get our fiddles out for practice, and I would try tuning it, and then I would give it to Sean, and Sean, my older brother, would say yes or no. And he said no for years. I thought I would be in tune, and I would give it to him, and he'd be like, oh, not quite, and he'd have to touch it up, And I remember I was 14 or 15 by the time he finally stopped saying, no, it's not quite right. And the thing is about the fiddle, it's unlike any other instrument. It's tuned in perfect fifths. It's tuned to itself. When the perfect fifths are out of tune, it makes this terrible... Here, I'll just show you. I'm going to make my fiddle really out of tune. Okay? And I'm going to show you, I'm going to demonstrate tuning it. Okay, so now I'm just screwing randomly with the tuning pegs here. Some of them I'm tightening, some of them I'm loosening. We'll see what comes out. Okay, so now I'm going to play my A. That is as flat as piss on a plate. You hear that? My God, it's horrible. Now, so I'm going to bring that up, and I'm going to do it this way. This is the way you're supposed to tune with your fine tuners. If you can manage it, it's really good. Most people have trouble at first, but if you can practice it, it's good. So you get your hand around there on the fine tuner, and you turn it while you're playing the note. Now I'm in tune. Did everybody hear that brighten up and kind of project a lot more when it came up into the tune? Now that A is bang on, okay? But it's not happy. I'm playing my A, and my tuner is kind of going, because the other strings are so out of tune that the A string is sympathetically vibrating them, and the tuner is picking up on that. And it knows that my fiddle is not happy yet. You see what I mean? So now I got my A in tune. Now I'm going to play the D along with it, and you're going to hear a perfect fifth out of tune. You hear that sawtooth kind of wow, 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 wow that's going along with it? Listen while I bring the D string up until it meets the A string, and you'll hear that go away. Everybody hear those come together? Yeah, and it's a really unmistakable sound. The fifth coming together like that, okay? Now I'll do the D and the G. You hear that distortion again? That wah, 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 wah. Everybody hear it come in? Yeah, very good. Now I'm going to play my E. Now I tighten my E so it would be sharp. And you can hear what that sounds like. You hear how that assaults the ear. See that? It's not like just annoying. It's really, really irritating. And that's how you know you're sharp, because it has that edge to it. Now I'm going to bring it down. You'll hear it come into tune. Everybody hear that? Yeah, that's how we bring it into tune. Now I'm going to check again because my fiddle was so out of whack that after all that tuning, I bet you it's changed again. Because again, it's the bridge. It's kind of going like this, getting nudged around. So I'm going to check my A again. And now it's sharp, so I'm going to bring it down. Now I'm going to check my A and D. Now I'm going to check my D and G. Now I'm going to check my E again. Now I'm good to go. So do you see how I did that? Okay, that's how you tune your fiddle. Now, you guys are not going to be able to do the perfect fifth thing now, where you play two strings at once and bring them together like that. Right now, you're going to have to do string by string, tune each string. If you get the order right, A, then D, then G, then E, should work out perfect for you for now. Get you in the ballpark, okay? But that's the most important thing about tuning your violin. Now, is there any question? Now is the time of the night. It's 22, and so we've covered the parts, how it's made, how the bow is made. We've covered holding it, covered holding the bow and why you have to do it that way. Bowing the strings, keeping the bow straight, making a good sound on the strings. Now, is there any questions about any of that before we finish up? Anything at all?
I have a couple questions actually.
Sure.
What does perfect fifth mean? Can you put more context into that?
Absolutely. So the fifth itself, that's an interval. That means that the notes are 5 notes apart. Watch this. Okay, 5 notes. Now the confusing thing is music has no zero. All right, so to go from A to E is 5 notes, but we include the A. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, do you see what I mean by that? That's a fifth. There's all kinds of intervals. There's the third, there's the sixth, there's the seventh, and these are all degrees of the scale. Okay, that's so a second is just this here interval. See that? 2 notes apart. That's a second. A third is this. A fourth. A fifth. See how that works? Whoops.
Okay.
Now, the reason they call it a perfect fifth is because the fourth and the fifth are the only intervals that can be perfect, meaning that they are not major or minor. They can only be perfect. So with a third, with the third, you can have major or minor. Here's a major third in the key of D. See that? Nice kind of chord sound there. Here's a minor third. See how the mood changed all of a sudden? Yeah. The fourth and the fifth do not have that capability. They are only perfect. All right? So that means that they are perfectly in tune. That's why even if they're a tiny little bit out of tune, you get that wah, 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 wah to the sound. Okay? The fourth and the fifth are unique in that way. And that's why I say the fiddle is really tuned to itself, you know? Sometimes you got to change the A note. Like over in Europe, like here in North America, we tune to A being 440 hertz or 440 cycles per second. But over in Europe, they tune to A440, 439. In the bagpipers, they tune to A446 or something like that. It's nuts. They like it really sharp. See what I mean? So that's why you tune the fiddle to itself using fifths. But you can't do that at this point, so you're going to do one string at a time, and we're going to gradually get you to that point. Any other questions? Anything at all? My favorite color? Anything?
I'm sorry to ask this again. It's called tunable, and it says on here it's $11.99. Is that like, I'm just afraid of buying the wrong one?
If it says tunable, TUNABLE, that's the one. They might have raised the price since I bought it. I'm not sure, but it's
that's okay.
definitely worth it.
Okay, thanks.
And you got to be careful with tuning apps because there's a million of them, and some of them are not good. Some of them are just awful. Others are too good. My wife uses one called Tonal Energy, and it's really awesome, but it's got too many indicators on the screen. It's like you get lost. You know what I mean? So that's the best one to get. Anybody else? Any questions at all? Now you're clear about how you're going to move forward. All you're going to do this week is try to get the best possible sound you can. That's it. Now, there's a few people that have been taking lessons from me and are a little bit past the beginner stage. But this exercise is going to be really good for you guys too. All right? With the people that can do those bows, those notes really nicely, if you can do it really nicely and you're not having any problems, speed up your bow. Try to do it even faster. See what goes wrong. Stuff will go wrong. Okay? And then you just adjust with this business here, picking up and bearing into the bow until you can move it really fast back and forth and it still sounds good. So like Lena and Shona, maybe Joanna and Elaine, you could probably start playing with that because I've already been working with you and getting a decent sound. Let's up the game a little bit and see if you can move the bow faster and still get a good sound. Okay? And that's all I want you to do this week. Playing each string without touching the others, getting a good sound right from one end of the bow to the other. That's what I want to see. All right? Not touching other strings, trying to explore the fiddle and learn about how you can make the sound really nice. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Okay, great. If there's no more questions, I'm going to leave you there. Next week, we'll start putting the fingers down. I can see that Cindy has some tape. You got some tape on your fiddle already, eh?
Yeah, that's my previous teacher put it on there for me.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, you might. I think it'll be handy. Not everybody needs the tape, but most people, it's very handy. You know.
Okay.
And for Sherry and Nancy, I don't know if you have tape on your fiddle yet.
I have little dots on the fingerboard, so left from the rental. Someone rented them before me, so I have
Like dot stickers?
stickers.
Perfect. That's great. Now, the reason that the sticker, and Sherry, do you have anything on your fiddle?
I don't, because I was afraid to wreck the ebony, so
You
I don't have to worry
can't,
about
first
that.
of all, you can't wreck ebony. It's the hardest wood in the world. And that's why there's not even any varnish on it, on a fiddle. Not one thing is needed for ebony because it is like the absolute hardest thing. But that being said, you don't want to use a tape that will leave residue because it's hard to get off there. It's just a pain, right? So I see that Cindy has the green painter's tape on there. That's the best thing. That's the greatest thing. Remember when you're taping up your fiddle, and I'll help you do it next time, Sherry. Don't bother trying to do it on your own, putting tape on your fiddle, because I'll show you where it goes and why. Okay?
Okay.
But the best thing about the tape is that it's not for looking at. And for whoever already has the tape on there, keep this in mind. You don't have to look at the tape. You feel it under your finger. Okay? Yeah. Because first of all, it's really hard to see anything on your left hand when you're playing. As soon as you put your third finger down, you cover 1 and 2. You can't see them at all. So it really does you no good to look down at your fingers. You can't see that tape. You don't know if you're on top of it or not. The best thing to do is feel it under your finger. So, you're sliding your finger up and you feel the edge of that tape and you know you're on it. See what I mean? Yeah. So keep that in mind. But like I said, for next week, we're just going to try to get a decent sound, and we're going to carry on from there. All right?
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. I'll send you guys this recording of everything we did here so that you can refer back to it, and we'll see everybody next week. And thanks a million, guys.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, see ya.